So it's not about how to grow food for eating. It's about how to grow food to make money. So you translate all of this. Well, I could go on. I'll stop. But it is like it was. It's not different. It's even worse. And so this. Oh, and the other thing you want to do is you want to create a proletariat that will work on these farms. So they work all day, all night for pittance, and then they have no home really to go home to, and they don't have a life. Well, if you look at the culture in the West, if you look at the United States of America, for instance, there's a host of people that are doing jobs that are very, fundamentally inhumane in nature. They're actually inhumane ways of living a life.
Yes.
And so it's kind of a Western concept of very capitalistic. So in any case, what we see in what's going on today, I see that as very much a part of a much larger global scene and a global way of turning food into money. So
yeah, with the emergence of globalization, you have pressure being put on these small communities, communities that are already facing environmental drastic
right.
kind of transformative environmental changes, and
you see this,
you have also local politics and
if you look at Somalia, the drought that they've had, they've had I don't know how many, but it's an fantastic number of people who have had to take refuge because there was no food, there was no water, and they had to go into the cities, and go anywhere they could, sleep here and there, and I mean, it's unbelievable. It's totally unbelievable. But this is not a concern of the UN. Oh, maybe that kind of concern, but not a real concern. Just want to talk, but that's all. And
okay. My next question is, so what's the best? So you wrote. I mean, you've been very influential in terms of bringing this book forward. I've also been, involved at various stages of the book. So what do you think is the
you were actually involved in it before I was.
Yes, going back
the very first stage.
5 years, with the first author, and then somehow the work got lost. I'll talk about why I got involved, briefly. So essentially, my family faced genocide back in Ethiopia a week after I was born, and I was reading. Somebody sent me the book to read it. In the process of reading, I discovered some of these battlefields, people who suffered genocide. It kind of read like my family's story. Lost about 15, 16 people. So I said, oh, maybe this could have been my family. So that's how I got involved, and I never looked back. In terms of working so hard and making sure this story gets out. Again, I'll talk about the details of my story and my role in future podcasts.
And that's partly in the book too, I think.
Yeah.
Or in your forward. Yes, your forward is very good in the book.
So what do you think is the fundamental, I guess, meaning of the book, I guess, in terms of what you want your readers to get out of the book? What's in terms of the message?
I think I want them to. I think that Mohammed's activity within the book shines a light on things, and it sort of shines a light because Mohammed's behavior isn't one of hatred. He doesn't hate. He's not a man who hates. So that's not what he does. He doesn't look at these people and hate them. He always comes upon any group that he deals with, any person that he deals with, and he treats them with a great deal of respect. And what that does is that often, because it's honest, it's real, it opens people up. They respond. The tension they feel in themselves, I think it lightens. It moves away a little bit, usually. He was in some situations in the book where that did not happen, where he was definitely in danger. But And that's another thing about Muhammad. He's also very astute. He knows what's going on. He's not taken in by
Mm-hmm.
what's going on in the book, and he knows how to. He tries to bring about a positive outcome wherever he is. He tries to bring out the most positive outcome that's possible,
Mm-hmm.
and he often does manage to do so.
Yeah, there is a particular passage in the story where the Amhara community was caught up in the middle of this huge battlefield in eastern part of Hararghe. I think in the region of it's called Bruk Atritra, LIA in that region.
Okay,
And Muhammad he did something I think remarkable. Yeah, would you mind commenting on that? Yeah.
well, what it was that that group of Amharas were located close to a group of Oromos, an Oromo village, and they were friends. So those Amharas and those Oromos were um, they had feelings for each other as people. They respected each other. They worked with each other. So they, I guess you could say, they fell in love for each other. I mean, really. So, and although one group was because these Amharas were not your wealthy elite Amharas. These were villagers, just like the Oromo were villagers. So they didn't feel that sense of I'm better than you are, or I'm something really different. They got together. I don't think they tried to make the other into themselves. I don't think the Amharas tried to change Oromos into Amharas or vice versa.
Right.
So the Oromos were worried about them because the Somali rebels had captured them. One thing about the Somalis, they have guns.
Mm-hmm.
It is a gun culture.
Right.
And so they can often corral people in that way. And in the book, that happens frequently. And but the Amhara were corralled. And so the Oromo had sent to where, I don't remember exactly where it was, but Muhammad wasn't that far away.
Mm-hmm.
And sent a messenger and told Muhammad what was happening. So Muhammad came back, and then he asked to speak to he had asked for somebody to come sent somebody to go get somebody from the Tufan, I think they were Tufan rebels, but they were Somali rebels, to come to speak to him. He wanted to talk to them about it. And so somebody was sent, but I don't think it was the first person that came to speak to Muhammad. He wasn't an actual leader. He wasn't the actual leader. So Muhammad said, I have to speak to the leader.
So Muhammad has his own rebel unit in the military.
Yeah, he had his own rebel unit. Yeah, oh, yes.
They spoke both Somali and Oromo.
The rebel unit, well, they varied some.
Right. Yeah.
I don't know if all of them spoke Somali.
Right.
He did. He spoke Somali.
Uh-huh. So he ended up rescuing the Amara village that was about to face, I guess, a massacre.
Well, he was a little more involved in that. It's kind of funny. We have two other Oromo heroes in the story that stand out, and that's Abdulatif and Myra. And yeah, and both of them are in the book. And Abdulatif, he was a big fella,
Right, yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He stood out in the crowd for sure. And so that was a sort of a background. That was a background fact in the story, and it has an effect on the Tufan rebel because he didn't. Well, also there's the Sadahad, which is sort of what's called. Sadahad was the group that Muhammad had behind him.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of story to that in terms of how the Sadahad is formed, and which is very, very neat. But yes, he did manage to save them. But it is how it happened. I don't want to get into it too much.
Right, because
it does have a. It's a bit amusing in some ways.
Right. Yeah.
It didn't have a bad outcome, so it's
Right.
so it's amusing. Okay. But there are many things that happen in the book that had a bad outcome, and they're not amusing.
So in the process of writing the book, can you describe some of the challenges that you faced?
Well, I frequently came up against things that didn't make sense. So I had to work that out with Mohammed. He had to explain it to me. We had to get into it. And Mohammed has an excellent memory. So that made it fun because he could remember what it was like, what was being said and what he thought. So I didn't have to make anything up. I didn't make anything up in the book. Everything that is in the book came from Mohammed. So Mohammed said, yes, I was like this. I said, well, this like that? And he said, no, it was like this or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'd ask maybe different things about it, and he'd fill it in. So then I could fill in the story where that he tells me. But the story is absolutely Mohammed's in terms of facts and so on.
Mm-hmm. So Muhammad speaks English, but English is his second language. Would that create another layer of challenge?
I wouldn't say that was his second language. I would say his second language is probably Somali. Mm-hmm. Well, no, Arabic. Arabic is probably his, maybe even, that's got to be his second, because he had that from the very beginning, because he learned Quran in Arabic. So he had to know it. Yeah, he was quite well educated at a very early age, actually. Mm-hmm. And so Arabic would be the first. Somali, when he was in his early teens, he learned it. And he also, Ziad Bari wanted to standardize the language. So he wanted it to be, he wanted to standardize writing Somali. So he was looking for a script, and he actually chose a Latin script to do it. And I think that Mohammed has always had an interest in languages and in writing, and he also used to write his, he learned how did it go? Using Somali to write, or was it, must have used Arabic. I don't know what script, I keep thinking. The Latin script. He may have learned the Latin script fairly early. I don't remember now. Uh-huh. But he'd write message. He was able to write Oromo using the sounds of Somali, right. I think. Mm-hmm. That's how he did it. And he used to send message back and forth to the community, the Oromo community. Mm-hmm. That was close to it. It wasn't that far from the camp where he was trained. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he there's some good stories about the languages too. Mm-hmm. I won't give it away.
Right.
And
so what's also another question, I guess a follow-up question, the most rewarding part of, being involved with this type of work, yeah? Can you elaborate on that? Yeah.
I think there are a couple of very rewarding. They probably are close, mm-hmm. neck to neck. And that would be meeting Mohammed, getting to know Mohammed, and seeing the book published. Mm-hmm. Is probably the most rewarding thing about the book. In that sense, that would be about the book. But it's opened me up to Ethiopia, Africa more, mm-hmm. and the plight of all of those in the Horn, and the influence of globalization on situation and the difficulties that are a consequence, and the extent of the difficulties. It's also introduced me to a lot of Oromos who are in the diaspora, or they're both in Ethiopia and in the diaspora. They may cross by flying back and forth. Yeah. But that would be people like Mohammed Hassan and Mohammed Ladasso. I don't know as well, but Mohammed Hassan, through his books, I know him a little bit, and a lot of Oromo literature. I have been exposed to a lot of it. It's very good stuff. Very interesting. The Oromo culture, the Gada, and the democracy, the history of the Oromo is fascinating. And Ranshalata, I've read some of him. And there's many, I could just reel them off, but I won't. But there's many, there's great work out there in terms of international relations, some work on international relations by some of the elements. Has written some that have to do with that, relating to the Horn of Africa. Mm-hmm. And as far as history of the Oromo, Mohammed Hassan has done some probably is groundbreaking work in terms of bringing it together so it's accessible to English readers.
Uh, so
I probably have missed somebody. I hope that.
right, yeah, yes, yeah. So can you tell me, like, what surprised you the most about Ethiopia in general? Its politics, culture, its history. Given what you've learned so far in the course of doing this work.
I'm surprised that. Well, I'm not really surprised knowing the West. I mean, I think I do know the West after
Mm.
a bit. They play games, but there was such a possibility in 1994, I guess it was, or 1991, when they met to establish a democracy in Ethiopia with the United States and England. I think they had a big meeting.
Yeah, with the OLF, the
Yeah,
TPLF,
they all left, the
the
Tigrayans,
different rebel
all of
groups.
them
Yeah.
got together to establish, uh, uh, I don't know, maybe a constitution of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
But at that time, and the Tigrayans, and I don't think personally, opinion is that the U.S. was generally wasn't too much concerned with democracy. I think it was concerned with
Mm-hmm.
control over whatever happened. So the Tigrayans became middlemen for the U.S. to some extent, and England
Mm-hmm.
and the West. But there we have other people in there now, like the Saudi Arabians and the Chinese are big in Ethiopia, I do believe.
Mm-hmm.
Own large swaths of land. Most of the land is for export, and most of it is to grow and to work it on the commodities, because commodities has become another way of making money.
Yeah.
It was supposed to be a stabilizing influence on the future, since you could not tell what the state of the crop was going to be. So, but you had to buy it. So you bought it, but you didn't know if it was going to be any good or not, or if it was even going to be there. So are the prices, if you bought it now. But with commodity selling, it was supposed to stabilize it so it wasn't so up and down. But instead of doing that, now it's a force for like something that swirls and creates money for those who play the game, who have enough money in it. And and many people are driven into poverty and without food as a result. And not just there, on many continents. So it's
Mm-hmm.
not just the continent of Africa that this is happening.
Right.
But it is, yeah, a lot of people. I met somebody recently who talked about him with Ethiopia, and he sees it from the vantage of Western writers, where Ethiopia is Abyssinia. And there's no knowledge really of Oromos. He was under the impression it was quite stable politically at this time, but no.
So currently, I mean, Ethiopia is also going through some sort of transition, as far as its future, I guess, politics is concerned, its future direction. And in fact, uh, the guy who was just elected to office is Oromo, the new prime minister, and the Oromos have been, um, engaged in this um, kind of growing, uprising over the course of the last 3 years. Um, and Muhammad, the conflict that Muhammad was involved in, what, like 40 something years ago, is still being played out. Um,
Yeah, I think that's true.
do
But
you
I also,
do you,
yes,
do you think we're seeing some sort of fundamental change?
think that it's an oasis of time. I think it's like a little circle of time
Mm-hmm.
where people can relax, breathe for a while, to some extent,
Right.
or everything will flatline, and by that I mean stay the same,
Mm-hmm.
not change, not get better. But there will be a lot of talk about it getting better.
Hope and yeah.
But I think the most disappointing to me was 1991, and that was the most disappointing. That was a cop out.
Yeah, I mean, the challenge there is, I mean, you have the TPLF group that pretty much fought, and with the help of the Eritrean, Liberation Front, they defeated the Derg. I mean, the Oromos had no, powerful army at the time. Um, so it was, I mean, if you're being practical, it's very hard to sit down and negotiate with a group that doesn't have an army, even though they're,
Well, even in the book,
yeah. So
we have a situation where we talk about negotiation. I don't have to bring it up; they'll recognize it when they read the book.
mhm,
But there's a point where there is a negotiation that Mohammed brings about, but there's guns on one side and no guns on the other.
Mm-hmm.
And the outcome is devastating. So I think that this imbalance of guns, of power feeds on power. I mean, like power blossoms
Mm-hmm.
when, if you have the power to dominate somebody else, then you don't want to be with them. You want to be over them. You want to run. You want to rule over them.
Right.
So you don't have to be with them. So a country that believes in domination has to have the power to dominate.
Mm-hmm.
And that's basic.
It's sort of almost a universal truth. Yeah. I mean, power. Especially hard power has always been the main instrument via which these governments rule over their people, and that is also the case in Ethiopia. But to just kind of ask you a follow-up question, do you think, I guess knowing what you know about Muhammad, and I'm pretty sure you've gotten to know the Oromo community.
I haven't actually gotten to know the Oromo community a great deal.
Okay.
So
or via Muhammad. Muhammad is just one person, obviously.
Yes.
We can't make.
Well, and the people I've met there around Mohammed. Yep.
Yeah. So to me, I think the Oromo culture itself is good on one hand. Focusing on justice. A sense of community. A sense of understanding. Not really using, the focusing on this hard currency, this power, the idea of the gun, like being able to enforce.
Which I think that's wise.
On one hand, it's wise, but on the other hand, you see them, being abused over and over again, just because if you don't have, the power to enforce, your way of life, then you're always under threat, So I think, you think that played a role in terms of almost, going through all this trouble as far as politics, yeah.
No, I don't think Humane is that sort of playing into the hands of the other side, into the hands of the Tigrayans by taking that attitude, one which is not one of coming up against arms with arms, but open arms instead, you could say. Because the OLF recently had this, I just read something on Kichu, I think it was, and the OLF has put themselves forward, and that was just a few days ago. They had a statement that they made, and it was that kind of statement. It was one of conciliatory. It was not one of aggression. So it was a typical LLF stand, and I think that is the right way to go. I think you have to do that because you're not going to win the other way. Because I don't think that fighting. We live in a global situation now.
Right. Yeah.
Our arms are being sold all over. Yemen has been suffering from arms sold by the United States to Saudi Arabia, and they're using the arms in Saudi Arabia. So to murder the population in Yemen. So I mean, that's unbelievable. It's horrible. So you have arms are being sold back and forth, and the people that are making arms want a buyer. So if the OLF were to become, or the Oromos as a group, a buyer of arms, they would only be feeding funds into these dominating countries. So I can't see the point. What they're doing, though, is how to keep it. The question is, in the midst of all of what goes on globally, how can you make it local? How can you make what I don't understand is how you can actually restrict the situation, even to talk about it, to a situation when there are so many are coming from all over the Japan. They want the money that comes off the land. You want that real deal broken with the Saudi Arabians and some Indians, I think, from India involved in large land purchases and deals with the Tigrayan government. I see those broken because they plan to make money off it. So you have those pressures, and then you have people.
Right. Yeah.
You have no question. You can tell.
Any hero that in the book, that somebody that you characters that you've put in the book?
That for a minute. Oh, this is Muhammad in the book and about the book. I did want in the book one of their heroes. So it's also as a memorial to other Oromos to a cause. It brings a lot of that out. So it is a book memorialized Oromos who have given their deal to Oromia. To Oromia. And I think that talks about also communities established in Saudi Arabia. He calls them antis Nabuti and how difficult that is for Oromo. And so, but now as far as the thing that I think they have their hero, and anybody who gives a life for it is a hero just by the fact that. So a hero like that, it does not does he through the book that he doesn't accept money from any money from either the Somalian government or from the Ethiopian government. Okay? He holds high positions in the military organizations he's in by virtue of who he is. He doesn't wear insignias. So he does it virtually by the power of his personality, by the way he is. But the power of his personality isn't one of dominance. It's a power of concern, care. His power comes from his concern for the other. So I think that this stands out. And his ability to rule is because I think he just is a natural leader. There are others in the book who stand out, and they are also heroes. And they stand out mightily because they did give their lives. But I think when you look at the world that, if you look at the world of Gada, and that we're talking about a real democracy. But that democracy doesn't look at heroes so much. The society is really an organism in a way. I mean, it really is from a spiritual level to a very mundane level. It's something that's that doesn't. It's not one where you feel a sense of internal to the Oromo society. That's
right.
Gada. You don't sense that sense of dominance, of the need for a strong man. The problem with a hero is that the hero, by virtue of that he's considered a hero, there's an adulation sometimes of a hero, and as well as a dependency on a hero. So I think with a democracy, you don't have that. You have more of an equal regard for each other.
Right. Yeah. So that has been part of one of the issues in a place like Ethiopia, where people still worship previous kings, previous leaders. They don't look at him as a leader whose job was to protect the welfare of the land and the freedom of his people. They look at leaders as hero, as somebody, something that is untouchable. It's like to the point of worshiping a leader, and it's something that has been very costly to Ethiopians in general, not just Oromos. So to go back to you were touching a little bit on the character of Muhammad. Muhammad is a Muslim, in terms of his religious practice, and he was brought up, early on in this village near Dedar, I guess Lagagaba in East Hararghe, and he was taught early on, in terms of a sense of respect, a sense of justice, a sense of freedom. Yeah, you think his religion has something to do with the way Muhammad behaved himself in the course of his journey in Ethiopia and Somalia, and in terms of what he did?
I think it was fundamental, but I think that the root of it lies in Muhammad. The root of it lies in his openness to it and his ability to value it from being 5 years old or so. So I mean, he was able let's put it this way, it worked for him. So this is something that worked for him. In other words, not everybody is responsive to. It's not something you're necessarily responsive to. Some people really are looking out for the number one. I mean, that's the way it is. I don't care about you. So everybody has their own character. So I think that is very much part of his character, this caring and this concern. And also the sense of what you have is, I was thinking about this the other day. Now, if I can only recall what it was that I was thinking, just a minute, I will get it back. Because it has to do with uh, because I was thinking about what this was like about the hero, but there was about the and about a religion and what that's like. Oh yes, when I look at the, I do have definite opinions. So anyway, the when I look at the religious, what we call the Christian religious right, the right is that what they do is they make God in the image of themselves. So their God is an image of themselves, what their values are,
Mm-hmm.
no matter how nasty I think they might be. But that's they want to make God. God is a stamp of approval on their behavior, and because they make God in their image.
Mm-hmm.
But when you take something like Muhammad, he stands to be judged by Allah.
Mm-hmm.
So he doesn't see making Allah in his image. He sees he must make himself in the image of the values that Allah has.
Mm-hmm.
So, and he's learned. So it's as if you have to come up to the mark when it comes to your God.
Mm-hmm.
But with the religious right, God has to come down to the mark that I make.
Mm-hmm.
So uh, I think to me that's the basic difference.
I see.
It's yeah, it simply is that he measures himself by how Allah is going to measure him.
Mm-hmm.
So there are instances in the book where he brings up the fact that I will have to answer to Allah for doing this
Mm-hmm.
this way. So I'm not going to do it. It's not right. And usually it is a matter of something that's incorrect, is corrupt, or something he doesn't want to do.
Mm-hmm.
He won't do it, but he does it because he will not look well in the light of Allah.
Okay, that's very interesting. Yeah, as far as there's definitely some values to be learned from the way Muhammad conducted himself during the course of his journey. Um, so we're almost getting to the end of our conversation here. Yeah, yeah. So what do you hope the Oromos to gain from this book?
I think that there's always a danger when you have conflicts such as you have in the Horn of people taking sides and what we call demonizing the other person. The other person becomes a demon. He's the enemy.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's easy to do. But what Muhammad did was he never did that. He never demonized anybody. Nobody was ever his enemy,
Mm-hmm.
per se.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't think he ever came to anybody as an enemy. They made him angry sometimes. It made him very sad, extremely deep in his being sad because of some of the things they did.
Right.
But he didn't see them as demons. So, but in our age, it's easy to, like back in World War II, Hitler and the Germans are all demons,
Mm-hmm.
You have these wars and you always demonize the other side. But that's it. What we had was, as I said before, early in cultures, you have flow between peoples. You did not have barriers.
Mm-hmm.
You did not have citizenships that way. You did belong to a clan, but something like that. But you still, you didn't have, it wasn't strict in the same way between peoples. That there was more flux, more room to maneuver,
Right.
to work things out. And what we have today is kind of that's a good point to be. But now we have states are now breaking down. That's true. Those barriers are breaking down. The EU and Brexit, all of these attempts to create new lines of difference.
Mm-hmm.
While at the same time, you have, particularly the U.S., you have a dominance that wants to overreach, because we're talking about empire here.
Right.
An empire is to enclose the whole within one empire.
Mm-hmm.
And one control towards it all. Dominance over all. And I see that as the far, that's not going to bring us anywhere good. That's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Also, just an extension of that question. again, just tying it back to what you've learned from Muhammad so far, in terms of his character, the core of his story. Um, um, what what do you hope other Ethiopians, to learn from Muhammad? Because we're still facing, some of the same issues as part of the conflict, tribal conflict. The differences in terms of language. Ethiopia is a very diverse country in terms of religion, in terms of its historical makeup. Still, some of these issues are um, um, all simmering underneath. I mean, it's still there. So what is there, like, some, I guess, big idea that you want other
Yeah, I've got
other
one big idea
yeah, other
that
Ethiopians to
that
sort of, like,
not Ethiopians as a whole, because I cannot speak to them, because I cannot speak to them as a whole. You see, from a very early age, they are educated. Those that are educated from the beginning to see Ethiopia in a certain light. Now, I was, from the beginning, educated to see the United States in a certain light. But it's very hard to move away from that light. So there were many, it's just that if you absorb it, then it's hard to move away from it. Right. So those who believe that the Amharas are one thing and the Oromo are Gala, then it's hard for them to believe otherwise. So I don't see that changing. And it's hard for, the Tigrayans, I don't know. I don't see these different ethno-nations really changing that much in their view of what Ethiopia is. For the Oromo, I feel that I actually think that Mohammed's book is really addressing a situation, but he's addressing it as an Oromo. And I think in that way, he's an exemplar. So he stands out as an ideal Oromo in a lot of ways. And the values of the Oromo, it's hard to maintain values when you're on the edges of this kind of discord. Because they're very positive values. And they don't involve demonizing others or taking up the gun, or you include people. It's an inclusive society to quite an extent. And so it's not exclusive. It doesn't define it's kind of, it allows a certain flow into the community from other communities. They can participate, become members, right. Things like this. And it's not it's not really a domination of the other person. The other person comes to feel comfortable, really. And then he begins to feel I think, a positive nurturing happening. And so then they're not forced into change, such as the Muslims and Christians have done in the past. When they moved into an area, you had to convert, or else you would be beheaded or whatever, and that kind of thing. So it's not that kind of conversion. It's more of it's because it feels good.
Right. Yeah.
That's very different. So I think that the Oromos have looking at particularly Gada and the society they had. I don't know if I've ever mentioned this before, but one thing that I find absolutely amazing about Gada is the age groups. You have age groups. And I believe how it works is the youngest age group is kind of guided by the next age group. The next age group is in close relationship with the group below it. And the one above that group is in close relationship with it as well. And it has a social effect on them. So it has an effect of creating good people. So this group creates good people at this level. This one also this level, and so on. So when you have age levels and they all form a whole, as it is, as children grow up and mature, they are guided all the way through by people who are almost peers, but more than peers. So you don't have adults dictating to children that way, in the same way. The adults rely on those, I believe, they would rely on older siblings to keep things on an even keel. So you have I think that's a really nice braiding
Right.
of social development. So I think that's a very interesting one. It seems to me very effective when it is in play.
So it's
Now, in a
very, so you're saying it's very hard to change these hardwired or, or
yeah,
historically ingrained,
yeah, well, that's another
concepts.
reason why this works
Hmm.
is because this well balanced sense of influence by members on other members is hardwired. When they're young, and if they're properly directed, then as they mature into full
Hmm.
and into a full human being, and they participate because they participate all the way.
Hmm.
They're participants. In our society, where you put kids in a classroom, they don't participate. Now you take what's happening in the states now. You have at Parkland, Florida, you have the students who had protested and that kind of thing.
Hmm.
Well, in a way, they're participating, but it's strange because they haven't probably participated. They were always told what to do, when to do it, how to do it.
Hmm.
So by adults, always adults.
Right.
So I think this is a different lattice work, you could say, of influence on members of the family and of the larger circle,
Hmm.
which I think is very effective and would be, and it makes sense that it would be
Hmm.
to me.
Well, thank you so much. We'll continue the conversation.
Yeah, we can talk again tomorrow.
Hmm. Yes.